I just wanted to bring a little bit of music in. Right, okay.
Lovely. That's very good of you. Well, Serge, welcome back. Welcome back to the podcast. It's not now 7 years since we last spoke. It's not even a month since we spoke about your wonderful new book, Gateways to the Soul. And intuitively, I knew when we started the last conversation that we couldn't pack it into one podcast. We had to split this into two podcasts. Fortunately, the book is split into two parts. So we're going to talk about part two now, which is kind of looking into the future. We've just come past the 21st of December, which in old money is the real. So today is the real New Year's Day. Forget
Yeah.
about this 31st of January man-made date and the 1st of January man-made date. Today is the first day of the next orbit of the sun for planet Earth, which is great. And I want to talk about. We're going to jump straight in to the future, what the future lies, what is open to us all if you fancy stepping through this gateway to the soul. But I know you've got a reflection about the past you want to share about Lot's
Well, the
wife.
reflection is I think we need to let go the past. And I'm thinking of the story of Lot's wife. She was told not to look back, and she did, and she turned into a pillar of salt. And there's too many pillars of salt hanging about in the world, and that's the problem with the world. And and if I'm honest, there's a little bit of pillaring in me as well, sort of maybe a little bit in you, because if we're ultimately in present time, sort of which is what we need to be in this moment right now, no future, no past, then we're fully alive. But I would like to be in the present and looking to the future because I feel very positive about the future. I think, um, that all the news, the sort of news emphasizes drama because humanity has a kind of addiction to drama. And sort of many people have had an addiction to the antics of a rather sort of ghastly person who sort of headed an enormous state in the world, and I don't wish to mention his name, and they are going to go through withdrawal symptoms now that this ghastly person is sort of phasing out.
And that is the past. We're not going to talk about the past too much, apart from that
We're not
lovely
going to talk
metaphorical
about it.
story of Lot's wife. I want to talk about these gateways with you, Serge. So you mentioned a few gateways here. I think there's must be a good 12 or 15 gateways to step through. But I want to jump into the middle of part two of the book. And this gateway, which really, really sang to me, actually, there's two gateways, actually. Gateways into joy and gateways of good work. And you know that phrase that if you love the work you do, you'll never work again. So you can find joy in this thing that we normally attribute not so good things to, which is this worky thing, because work sounds like we're pushing water uphill. So I'd just like to, if you could share what steps one could take to jump into joy and into the good work.
Well, there's many things. I think joy is inside us. We don't need to generate it, but we need to allow it out. And to allow it out, we need to let go those those sort of covers that we hold inside us, or those stories that we hold inside us, that we don't deserve joy, or that there isn't enough joy in the world. For example, the Judeo-Christian tradition that says, we need to suffer on the cross as Jesus suffered for us, and therefore, to be a good person, we have to struggle and not feel joy. And also the story that we inhabit, that there isn't enough in the world. There isn't enough love, there isn't enough water, there isn't enough food, there isn't enough money. Actually, there's enough of all these things if only we learn to um, to generate them, and that the greedy people don't take too much. So sort of joy is that we need to face our joylessness, and it's also connected with the need to struggle. And I'm sure that we can all think of people who are immensely rich and all they do is struggle. And there was a friend of my father's who was a financier, and he owned the most beautiful island that was a paradise. And he was worth millions and millions and millions, but he never ever got to visit it because he was so busy. He'd occasionally sort of helicopter in the morning, but have to leave that evening in order to go to a business meeting. And one thinks, you know, how terribly sad, and that there's an enormous virtue in just sort of letting go, and sort of letting go into our being, because that is a very, very important gateway into joy. Also, Tom, I use the word gateway because it's like in life we have gateways, they're portals of initiation. You know, humanity is facing a big initiation. We need to take a next step. We need to move with joy and with working with joy beyond some of our old attachments and addictions, which hold our soullessness in place. But I think it's very, very important that we work with joy, and we're not like my poor old stockbroker who would love to say to me, I'm a stockbroker for my sins. And he actually sort of meant it. And I remember looking at his face, it was full of the worries of worrying about everyone else's money. I remember also seeing an advertisement for a bank in Geneva called Pictet and Son, and it was advertised by two elderly men, sort of looking very anxious and miserable, saying, "We worry about your money." Well, when I looked at that advertisement, I thought if I had money, I would not want to put it to these two miserable gentlemen who worry about it.
All the time.
This myth, worry means that you care. You don't care. You know, if you worry, there's no space for compassion. If you worry, you don't get the best out of things. If you worry, you can't see the truth about things.
And
So anyway,
you can't open the gateway to joy, obviously.
And you can't open the gateways to joy, which we open, Tom, by doing things that make our hearts sing. So my gateways to joy, I love my work. I love writing. I love swimming. I love being with my beautiful daughter and being with my friends and my wife and playing music and playing the fool. I've got a fat suit I've just bought, and I thought on Christmas Day I would go and dance in the square in the fat suit and play my ukulele and wish everyone sort of happy Christmas. And sort of luckily the fat suit has a cover on my face, so no one will recognize me. And with my mask, I'll be even more indistinguishable. But that for me is fun. So joy is also connected with fun. I like to have fun, and that again is a bad word. You know, we aren't supposed to have fun. You know, it's just for those sort of people who don't do anything, who don't work hard, who don't struggle. And I think that we need to find lifestyles for ourselves that are fun and that have least struggle. I think we create excess struggle for ourselves because it's part of the story that there's a virtue in it. It's the Puritan work ethic. You work hard, you work till you're wrinkled and gray, as that sort of song goes. I work till I'm wrinkled and gray, and the lucky old sun has got nothing to do but well, however it ends, I can't remember. But I don't want to work until I'm sort of wrinkled and gray. I want to work so I can celebrate life.
So these gateways, then, if you don't mind me just expanding on that metaphor and analogy. So it strikes me that none of these gateways have got padlocks on them. They're all open, but some of them might have slightly rusty hinges and need a bit of oiling. But also, if you've passed through a gateway, so you've passed through this gateway to joy and fun and the good work, you can also hold that gateway open for other people, can't you? Allow them just to wander straight through.
And when we hold it open for other people and we help others, that opens new gateways for us. Yes, I quite agree. They don't have padlocks, but we need to know sort of where they are. And they do require a little bit of effort to move through. I liken them at one level to different realities, that every shift in consciousness has a gateway we need to sort of pass through the tests that will allow us to move from one level to another. And I think life gives us tests. And I think we're all being tremendously tested at this moment. Mm-hmm. And there's many gateways, and we each have different gateways to pass through. Like your gateways may not be the same as mine, but then sort of once we passed through, then there's more gateways that we need to pass through. And if we listen to our hearts, we'll be directed, we'll be moved to go in the direction where the gateway lies. And also we'll be instructed from within ourselves how best to circumnavigate that particular gateway, because some are a little narrow. We've got to squeeze through, sort of others are very wide and we can just sort of somersault through. So there's different kinds of gateways, and especially where they're rusty, then we need to take care, special care, because if we scratch ourselves, you know, on something rusty, it can go septic. So sort of basically, the gateways are protected, and it's not a good idea to try to go into gateways that we're not sort of able to go through yet. In psychological terms, it's called, and what my friend John Welwood calls, I've forgotten the word, but it's that you jump into a reality before you're ready to go through. Well, the word will sort of come back. But basically, it can be a little bit dangerous. And that's why sort of people who take drugs, who take LSD, and they don't understand about it, and they go through a very high gateway, suddenly unprepared, it may be very difficult. It may bring up a lot of shadow, because these gateways are protected. You know, in sort of Buddhist sort of terminology, the wrathful deities protect the entrance into the sacred spaces. So if we try to move into a very sacred space and we're not sufficiently purified, we might be be met by the wrathful deities. In other words, we may have to confront our dark sides and our shadows very strongly. Actually, Tom, I think that that's the initiation at the moment of humanity as a whole, where we're facing a jumbo-sized human collective gateway. Are we going to be able to have the courage and the initiative and the will and the love and the desire to move to a new level? Because if we don't, I mean, I think we're going to, but it's going to be a big challenge. And this is the challenge in the future. And I'd like to suggest that we meet this challenge with joy. Thank you. Thank you. We've got a really good challenge ahead. Let's really get our humanity going and let's move through this collective gateway.
It reminds me of Rudolf Steiner's notion of the lesser guardian of the gate, of the threshold, and the greater guardian of the threshold. And the lesser guardian is all your woes and fears and guilts and everything that come up to greet you, which you embrace. It's different for everybody how the lesser guardian approaches you or appears. But if you embrace the lesser guardian and move through, then you then meet the greater guardian. The greater guardian is more of a confirmation. So it's less initiation, more to say, okay, you got here now. By the way, here's a scroll. Open it up, and it's your mission. Should you choose to accept it, which is a kind of analogy that I've been running to in my world.
That's great. Yeah.
So how can we help people get with this initiation? So we obviously want as many people on the planet to zoom through these unlocked gateways, nicely oiled, hopefully opened by and held open by others that have gone in before. What's the best way to initiate yourself so you're ready for this journey?
Well, we need courage. That's why I have a chapter on courage.
Mm-hmm.
And courage comes through the choice to do something. I told the story of Harry, who was standing on a railway, on a platform, and a little baby fell down on the track and the train was coming. And Harry just found himself sort of jumping down, throwing the baby up and getting up, and his jacket got ripped by the train that passed him. So he nearly died. But by a millisecond he made it, which shows that there is an altruistic streak in everyone. And when he told me that story, he said to me, "No, I didn't know I was courageous. I saw the baby on the line and the train coming, and I just had to jump down and get it." So it shows that there's a deeper, sacred, wonderful, altruistic part in all of us that's longing to come up, and the train is approaching, and we need to, sort of metaphorically speaking, jump down on the line. But to do this, as you wisely said, Tom, we've got to face our demons. We've got to face our fears. We've got to face our greed. We've got to face our sense of inadequacy. We've got to face our complacency. We've got to face our evolutionary laziness, whereby we don't do something until we really have to do something. And what I fear is that if humanity does not act now, a bit like the smoker who's told by his doctor to stop smoking now, else, he's going to get something bad sort of later, that there's the fear that we may sort of leave it a little bit late. But I'm hopeful that enough of us are going to go for it now. And I think if enough of us go for it now, that we can create a new field of enterprise, which will make it easier for other people to go through the gates. In other words, we're all connected together. And I know that I am helped, Tom, by the really wise people on the planet. And because they're creating a new opening for me. So if I can dance in their slipstream, then I can be helped by what they're doing, and me in a lesser way can open up a space for people who are a little less awake, and they can move through. So we need to do this together, that the days of individuality are passé. We need to move forward together in this collective initiation. And in terms of that, I'm very positive about what's happening in America at this moment. I think that country has a lot of demons to face. I think there's a lot of difficulties. A lot of people believe in all sorts of weird conspiracies, but that is part of the sort of confused mindset that exists. But I feel that there's enough goodwill that that country is going to make it.
So you talk in the book about ensoulment at work, but it strikes me that ensoulment is something which could benefit all facets of society. And you also mentioned about the Peekaboo God and the Peekaboo soul. So in this journey through the gates, so assuming you got mortals oiling the hinges and holding them open for you and helping you with initiations and the like, is there also a soul kind of somewhere lurking in the distance, kind of beckoning you on and challenging you to step through?
Well, Teilhard de Chardin, the great visionary theologian, who was sort of writing in the 1930s and 40s, he talked about a cosmic omega point towards which, a point of ultimate synthesis towards which all of life is converging. And he suggested that this point of ultimate synthesis in space and time is reaching down to us and pulling us up towards it. So at the same time as we're trying to move forward, there's a force that is pulling us forward as well.
And I've got to say, his book, The Phenomenon of Man,
yeah, exactly,
that pulled me towards writing Soul Waves, the novel, and the book that's coming.
It did, yeah.
So I feel very pulled by Teilhard, and also he talks a lot about the noosphere, this collective consciousness as well, which must be an aspect of that omega point. So the omega point must work through the noosphere too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow.
And I think that that's the importance of stillness, that if we can still our minds, it allows a space to open our hearts. And when our hearts are open, we can connect with our souls. And when we connect with our souls, that's the part of us that is being pulled towards our deeper destiny as future humans. I worked in California. We started an institute called the Institute for the Study of Conscious Evolution. And I worked with a wonderful woman called Barbara Marks Hubbard, who about 20 years ago was the first woman who also tried to be elected as President of the United States, a really gutsy, incredible lady. And she suggested that a lot of these great sort of teachers like Jesus and the Buddha were future humans, and they sort of came back in time and space to kind of help us and to sort of pull us up, into our deeper being. Because I'll tell you what I feel strongly. I feel that this wonderful experiment with man, it is not going to fail. We may go through dark spaces. There may be death. There may be death of the old patterns, there may be actually a lot of physical death, which we're seeing with this particular sort of virus. But I feel that we have an incredible future, and I feel that the future human being will be a being as different from you and I, or from us at the moment, as chalk is from cheese. And I think we're being pulled into this deeper rust. And this is the thing that excites me. Are we going to be on the side of those who are being pulled forward, or are we going to sit and try to keep the status quo or the old order still going? That's our big challenge, Tom.
You talk about gateways into friendship in the book as well. So it strikes me that sometimes this inverted commas spiritual journey can be a bit of a
this is a present from my daughter.
Mr. Perfect, I love it. This journey can be a bit lonely sometimes and solitary, but it strikes me that actually doing this with a bunch of soul buddies could be a pretty good way of stepping forward.
Well, you're my soul buddy.
Well, thank you.
And I hope I'm your soul buddy.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think there's different kinds of friendships, but I think friendship is incredibly important. And I think friendship is the antidote to racism, homophobia, Islamophobia, and all those phobias, because sort of if we befriend ourselves, if we befriend humanity, then it allows us to move beyond all those separations that we hold. You know, I'm old and they're young, I'm white and they're black, I'm conscious or I'm unconscious and they're conscious, and all these separations that we have, if we can touch into the deeper friendship that exists between all of human beings. And that's what Joseph Biden is trying to do in America. He is trying to befriend and move beyond partisanship, that is all about unfriendliness, that if you believe in a different thing from me, I'm not going to be your friend. That is so wrong. And I'll tell you, I have 3 buddies who belong to the QAnon conspiracy. And I have gone out of my way. Of course, I don't believe in it. I think it's nonsense. But I've written them sort of emails to say, I may not agree with what you believe, but I'm not going to make you wrong. I honor you as my friend, and we're all part of an emerging humanity. I think that that is so important, to befriend wherever we go, to be an agent of befriending. So we walk in the streets and we have a friendly attitude towards everyone. Not everyone is going to be our friend, you know, but we can certainly be friendly to everyone. And especially, Tom, we need to be friendly to the down and out people, to those who have nothing, to those who feel outsiders, to those on Christmas Day who are walking about, you know, and it's snowing outside and their nose pressed against the pane of the glass and they're seeing the happy family inside. It's these people, the outsiders, those who are on sort of, who sort of exist outside of society. It's these people who we need to befriend, and it's incredibly important. So then we're a friend of the earth.
Yeah. And I guess then as to have written this book, Gateways to the Soul, Inner Work for the Outer World, you have to be standing on the other side of the gates to give you that perspective of how you go through the gate. What sort of carrot could you hold up for somebody to encourage them to walk forward and even look at the gate with a view to going through it? And this includes people like you just describing, that might not even have the resources to do it, or even able to get hold of the book. How do you take this message to people in such a way that they start walking through and helping other people through? Because it strikes me that this is a bit of a collective exercise, and to work, it doesn't involve everyone having read the book.
Not everyone is going to want to go through the gates, and you can't force anyone. I don't believe in any force, but you can create a context that a person, to help a person begin to see that their life will be more fun if they work in alignment with the force or in alignment with human evolution, as opposed to resisting it. I mean, I can say now, in all honesty, I had a lot of fun when I was a young guy, but I have a lot of fun now. And it's a different kind of fun than when I was young. But there's a lot of fun, and it's because I feel I have the force on my side. I've got sort of evolution sort of working sort of with me. So it's sort of trying to help people to align themselves with the greater force of evolution, or the will of life to create new life at ever higher levels of consciousness. I know that sounds a bit pretentious, but it's actually true. And I also find that when people are helped to empty some of their fears and traumas and pain that keeps them rigidified and clenched, that also opens up a space to allow the force to be with them. Because I feel, Tom, that the universe is eminently generous. It wants us to feel abundant. It wants us to feel alive. And why we don't allow the abundance to flow through us is because we're blocked, is because we have fears and resistances against it. And if those can be let go of, then the abundance of the universe and the generosity of the universe can flow through us. I like that word, sort of generous. I feel we live in a very generous universe. And we see this when we go out to nature, Tom. We see sort of flowers of spread, the seeds of spread, the things of color everywhere, trees, and nature is so generous and abundant. If we can tune into that, it can help us to realize the abundance of our own nature.
That's exactly what Teilhard de Chardin was saying. There's a cosmic force which is drawing us on, and I use the word benevolent when I talk about the cosmos as well.
Yeah, benevolent.
Yeah. So it strikes me then that even if this is just a model, and it's just a faith, effectively, if the faith works and it allows you to step through the gate, then it's as good a thought to hold in your head and a belief set to hold in your heart.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So you're now on the other side of the gate, well and truly, because you couldn't have written this book unless you were there. And obviously, unless there's more gates to step through. So in the next orbit of the sun, Serge, I'm going to ask you this question in a slightly different way than I normally ask another guest, like what's your next book? Has your next path and your next set of gateways been identified for you yet?
Yeah. Well, first I just want to correct you. I'm very low down in the gateways. There's many gateways I have to move through. So I'm just a beginner in this field. And I want to really make that clear. I'm just starting out, and I feel like a sort of drop of water beside a whole ocean. And I think that it's so important to have that sort of perspective. And I really feel that. So I want to make that clear. And the second thing is that I was actually asked to write my memoirs, and I'm doing that at the moment. And it's really quite interesting because in doing that, I really see that there was a kind of purpose in my life, including all the mistakes I've made, all the wrong turnings I've made, of which there's been many, all the bad judgments and the failures, actually were sort of part of a sort of a wholly evolving process. And I realized that the difficulties I've had have been tests for me. I realized that the mistakes I'd made, I couldn't have done anything different given where I was at that particular time. And in writing my memoirs, I sort of feel sort of grateful to the great spirit or to the intelligence of life that has moved me to where I needed to be, and that always put me in touch with a catalyst that I needed. When I got a serious disease once, I just happened to sort of bump into a person who was an expert on that disease. And so he knew where I needed to go. If I hadn't bumped into him that day, I'd have died in a couple of days, but he knew exactly what was wrong with me. I bumped into spiritual teachers. I was invited to a party where I met my wonderful wife. All these things are beautiful synchronicities, and we need to sort of honor that. In fact, I have much more respect for all the mistakes I've made because I realized, Tom, I couldn't have done anything else at the time.
Well, I've just done something which is, you'll appreciate then. I've taken your wonderful book, for all its many pages, and I've just opened it randomly on a page.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And this is a good example, a working example of how this works. And I thought I'll just find because there's many exercises to do in the last part of the book. I mean, you can spend a life going through this book, right? And this is so relevant to what you just said. It says it, exercise. Look at your life and ask yourself this. Do I live it courageously? Do I live it adventurously? Do I ever take risks? If so, how and where? Where in your life are you the most courageous and adventurous? Think about this carefully and make notes. Perhaps you'll discover that you're braver than you believe. And that seemed to be so relevant to the steps you've taken that only in writing your memoirs do you realize how courageous you were.
Well, I tell you, I think if we're in a war and we sort of run forward, sort of with the machine guns, and we shoot down the enemy, we get awarded a medal. But I think for those people I know who are courageous enough to try to be themselves, Tom, in a world that asks us to be our artificial self, I think that's an act of courage. In fact, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, in his book On the Path of the Warrior, he starts off with saying the most courageous thing that anyone can do is to choose to be themselves, to explore being themselves. So then we need to ask, what is being ourselves? And then one realizes that that's what the journey is about. To realize that who you and I and all of us are, we're not our beliefs about ourselves, we're not our values, we're not our attitudes, we're not our prejudices, we're not, our minds, but who we are is a sacred self, a soul that stands behind it all, the I am. So that's the courageous thing. How can we find who we are in a world that does not support us doing that?
Well, it's surely memoir writing, if you did it for no one else but your good self, that would be a good exploration to discover who you truly are by looking back at who you've been.
Well, I'm just beginning to slowly discover little sprinklets of who I am. I hope in another 10 years, I will have uncovered a few more sprinklets, but there's a very long way to go. And the wonderful thing is that we need to ask ourselves the question, Tom, why do we come into the world not knowing who we are? I mean, sort of, wouldn't it be much easier if you and I and all of us humanity, that we were all born knowing that we were a soul, knowing that we were one with all that is, knowing that we were connected to our fellow human beings on the planet, how much easier it would be. Well, but there wouldn't be a game. You know, if we want to run the 100 yards, then we've got to start at the beginning, because we can't start at the end, because there'd be nowhere to go. So that's the journey, that's the game. And how can we play the game of life at ever higher levels of being? I think that that's the great challenge.
Oh, I love that. I love the notion that we're sent down here without an operating manual. But I like the way also that...
Well, no, Tom, we are sent an operating manual, but we don't know it. It's hidden, and we've got to discover it. And we just discover the little bits of it that are relevant to the level that we're at. So the operating manual, yeah, it's inside us, but we don't know it. And we have to uncover it, because it doesn't come from outside. I mean, sort of capitalists from outside can come and tell us and remind us that it's inside, but essentially, you know, it's inside us. That there's a song that a friend of mine wrote, and I'm just going to sing one verse. It's in sorry, it's in every one of us to be wise. Find your... Oh, I've got a cold. I'm not going to sing it, but I'm going to say it. It's in every one of us to be wise. Find your heart, open up both your eyes. We can all know everything without ever knowing why. It's in every one of us by and by. And I think that that's the journey, Tom, isn't it?
That's the journey.
It's in you and it's in me.
Well, that's lovely. I will say, though, I have to say this, that Gateways to the Soul, I think, is a pretty good operating manual too. So it's definitely worth having a look at. And also, it takes a bit of courage to buy a book like this and read it. And that's why I didn't want to read it quickly. And I wanted to spread this conversation over two podcasts, because you can't dive into this and just sort of cherry pick the bits that you like and ignore the other bits. You've got to really go in with both feet, I think, to savor.
Thank you very much, Tom.
So it sounds like then we've got when this memoir's written, which I hope is in less than one orbit of the sun, we'll be having a conversation again, if not sooner. Serge, where's the best place for people to find out more about you and to get hold of the book?
Amazon.
Yeah.
And to find out about me, go onto my website. Well, just Google Serge Beddington-Behrens, and all sorts of sort of videos and all sorts of things will come up. And but my website is www.sergebeddington-behrens. But if you just sort of Google Serge Beddington-Behrens, you'll find out sort of everything. And if you want to get in touch with me personally, as it's Christmas or after Christmas, if anyone would like to do a free session and you're going through challenges, please be in touch. I'd be happy to talk with you, no charge, you know, my Christmas present.
Oh, how sweet.
So I offer that.
But also, if you're on the island of Mallorca and you listen to this podcast before Christmas, you might find a mad loony in a fat suit with a face mask and a ukulele running around the square.
A mad loony, yeah, absolutely, a mad loony. Now that is a compliment. You know, sort of, what did William Blake say? The fool in his folly will become wise.
Yes.
I think that the real mad people are the people who sort of run government, who sort of work in all the institutions. So let's be divinely mad, you and I.
And the fool is the wisest card in the tarot as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Serge, it's been a real joy and a pleasure. I'm glad that we didn't try and squeeze this conversation into one quick podcast and we spread it out. It's been a joy and a pleasure. And let's hope that our paths cross very soon. Our foolish paths cross very soon.
Our foolish paths. Well, dearest Tom, thank you very much. You're a great mate. And I'll be in touch with you, after and sort of, and maybe I can do an interview with you. Would be nice.
That would be a real joy. Well, next year, let's do something about soul waves next year, and this being this magical force that connects us and how we can tune into them. That would be a real joy and a pleasure. Let's set that up. Fantastic. So
Great.
À bientôt. I suppose. Au revoir.
Sort of happy Christmas, happy New Year, and much love, my dear Tom. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.